Hello, we're going to be reading chapter 6 of our story Black Beauty. So here we go. Chapter 6, The Fire. Before James was to leave, my master and mistress decided to visit some friends who lived some distance away. James was to drive them. As the sun went down, we stopped at a hotel and dropped off my master and mistress. James drove us to the stable, and two men came out to take care of us. The little man in charge was a pleasant person. I never saw anyone unbuckle a harness as quickly as he did. With a pat and a kind word, he led me to a long stable housing 2 or 3 horses. The other man brought Ginger. I never was cleaned so quickly as by that little old man. When he was done, James petted me, thinking the man might not have done a very good job, but he found my coat as clean and smooth as silk. Practice makes perfect, said the little old man. After 40 years of practice, I should be doing everything right. James laughed with him. They conversed about how to train horses. James was pleased to hear that the old man thought as he did. Train them as you would your children, James said. That's what we believe. Who is your master, young man? Squire Gordon of Britwick Park, James answered. Ah, I have heard of him. He is a fine judge of horses. Some say he is the best rider in the country. I believe he is, replied James, but he rides very little now, since his son was killed. I read all about it in the newspaper, the man remarked. Wasn't there a fine horse killed too? Yes, said James, a splendid creature. He was a brother of this fine horse here. James pointed to me. That's a shame, said the old man. It was a bad place to leap, if I remember correctly. I like to go on a hunt as much as any other man, but no foxtail is worth the life of a young man and a fine horse. James nodded his head sadly in agreement. When they finished grooming us, they left the stable together, still talking about Rob Roy. Later on that evening, another traveler's horse was put in the stall next to mine. While the groomer was brushing the horse, a young man smoking a pipe walked in. I could tell they were friends. Hey, Towler, said the groomer, run up the ladder into the loft and throw some hay down into this horse's stall, but lay down your pipe before you go up there. All right, said the young man. By the time he got finished, James had come to say good night. The doors were locked and the two men left. I can't say how long I slept, but I woke up suddenly and put my nose up to a smell. The air seemed thick. Ginger was coughing, and one of the other horses was moving about restlessly. I heard a rushing noise and a low crackling and snapping sound. I didn't know what it was, but it made me tremble all over. The other horses were all awake now. They pulled at their halters and were stamping their feet. At last I heard steps outside. The groomer burst into the stable with a lantern and began to untie the horses, trying to lead them out. The first horse would not go with him. Finally, he left the stable alone. I guess we were all foolish, but there was nobody we knew we could trust. Then I heard a cry of fire outside. The little old man who had groomed me so well showed up quickly. He came in the barn and led one horse out, but the flames were now roaring overhead dreadfully. The next thing I heard was James' voice, quiet and cheery as always was. Come, my beauties, it's time for us to be off, so wake up and come along. I stood nearest the door, so he came to me first, patting me as he came in. Quickly, he took the scarf off his neck and tied it lightly over my eyes, then let me out of the stable. I whinnied as loud as I could, trying to get Ginger to come out. James continued, bringing the horses out one by one. There was shouting, and I could see black smoke pouring out thicker than ever. In the middle of this mess, I heard my master's voice call out, James? James, are you there? There was no answer, but I heard a crash of something falling in the stable. The next moment, I gave a loud, joyful neigh. I saw James coming through the smoke, leading Ginger out with him. She told me later that my whinnying was the best thing I could have done. If she had not heard me outside, she never would have come out. A sound of galloping horses and rumbling wheels caused everyone to look around. It's the fire engine, shouted 2 or 3 people. The firemen leaped to the ground just as we got away from the building. Later, we found out the young man who had been in the barn earlier had left his pipe there, and the hay had caught fire. Ginger and I were so lucky to have been saved from that fire. We would always be grateful to James for saving our lives. That's the end. See you next time.